Okay, here we go. Welcome to Porch Play Chat, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA-USA. IPA-USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. And as part of our efforts to promote play, we introduced Porch Play Chats, and we're in our third year. These are all free to you and can be used at the beginning of staff meetings and then have a discussion about them, or used for professional development. You can find these free Porch Play Chats on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, where they're released every Monday. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, be a friend on our Facebook page, and always have the latest one. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA. And with me on the porch is Lisa Murphy. Hey, Lisa.
Hello.
And joining us today is Ross Thompson. He is a favorite of the Porch Play Chat folks. People go, oh my God, he was just wonderful. And so Ross, we're so happy to have you again. He's a longtime advocate for play and an avid Dungeons and Dragons player. I still have to introduce you to my stepson. And the co-host of the podcast, Teaching with the Body and Mind, and the program and educational director to help create play-based early learning centers in the South Metro area of Minnesota. So today, Ross is going to talk to us about how much is too much for children, noise, mess, risk, using real tools, and for adults, assessment, documentation, and teacher-directed activities. Oh boy, is this like, this could be an hour.
I mean, this could be a week. We could.
My
This
God.
is a dissertation.
I was gonna say
It is. This is really a dissertation.
If I plan this right, I could turn this into my PhD, so we could make this happen. But I think it's exactly that. I think, when thinking about this, and as you can see, how much is too much. Here I am in our office/storage room, and I'm sure, like many programs, they have those closets or those rooms where you got as much stuff in. And so, yeah, I was hoping you kind of help me maybe unpack this conversation, because I think I don't think there is necessarily a right answer that I'm looking for today, but just the idea of how much is too much. And it came from a recent Reggio conversation, looking at the Reggio inspired practice and philosophy and the idea of documentation. And I was like, well, documentation is important. It's great. It's a great tool for teachers. It's a great resource for parents to be able to see what's going on. It's a great resource for children to look at. But at what point does it become too much, where it's taking up all of your time and you're no longer with the children in the space? You're only in the documentation mindset. So you're missing the opportunities. The other examples of for children, how much, noise, stimulation, direction. And I thought help, when we offer children help, are we really offering them help and assistance, or are we just going to do it for them? So there's a lot of different avenues that we can jump into today. And I think, where do you want to start?
Oh my God. So I want to start with, can we start with how much play in a classroom during the day is too much?
Well, that's easy. There's never too much. Next question. Gavel down. Go. Lightning round.
What does play in the classroom look like?
Yeah.
Right?
There's too much adult intervention.
Yeah. Is there too much? And is it too controlling because the adult is choosing what's available in the play-based environment?
Right.
Because, you can't have Boston Dramatic Play open at the same time. It's too noisy.
I mean, classrooms implode when that happens. I mean, it's not possible.
I know, it's not
possible. Too much plastic crippity crap.
Right.
Too much crap in the room. So there's no time for play.
Well, and I think so maybe that's where we can jump into. I think there's the idea of abundance, which I think is great for children to, if you have that opportunity, that children have ample resources to use, but that can very easily be a fine line between abundance and clutter, or productive noise versus overwhelming noise, mess versus chaos. I think that there's a lot there. So I think looking at your space, and I think, and if let's say we're in the classroom setting, if you're the teacher and you can't see it, ask somebody to just like, what does it look like and feel like in here?
Mhm.
Or set up your an iPad or a camera or something and just record it. Take a look back maybe. But I think that idea of if you only have 2 capes in your dress up area and you have a classroom of 12 and all 12 want to be superheroes at the same time, you're probably going to need more capes. If you have, 3 full 3-shelf community plaything shelves that have 9 dividers on each, and they're all filled to the brim with, Legos and Duplos and Magnetiles and Peg People and corks and all those end up getting dumped all over the place. Yeah, that probably feels like too much.
Mhm.
So I think there's that idea for play, from a resource and material standpoint. What's it look like? How functional can the children be? And how much do you have to step in to intervene to either help children divvy up the items or resolve conflicts that come up, letting them have the chance to talk about those things? Lisa, you want to say something?
Well,
Oh, me too.
Deb, get in there.
So we had the play, we've done play interventions, right? Where we took everything out and everybody knew what they were signing up for. So if you haven't heard me talk about this before, it wasn't like they drew the short stick and we showed up and it was like, like they knew it. Everything came out of their classrooms and they were not allowed to put anything back in until they could tell us who it was for and why it was needed in there. So then Jeff and I, during our podcast, we talked about this experience. And then one of our listeners, a family childcare provider, took it upon herself to kind of do her own. She took absolutely everything out of her playroom and didn't put anything back in until the children asked for it. And if my memory is serving me correctly, there were multiple days where there was, quote unquote, nothing in the room except for space. And the children were literally exploring that empty space. And I believe the first thing they asked for back was blocks and trucks.
Yep.
So I think there's definitely a strategy there.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel that if you don't know why it's in here, like who is this for? Did you just get it on sale at a conference? Was it buy one, get one? Was there Pinteresty all cute and barfy? Yep. Then what is the intention behind this being in there? I also think, and then Deb, I'll shut up and let you jump on. I think that some of us play loose part advocate people need to be careful of not sliding down the slippery slope of we can get kind of judgy. We can get kind of value like my collection of spools and tires and gutter and upside down milk crates is better than your plastic crap from the catalog. And I've had my lens shifted a little bit on that, listening to some of Mark Armitage's online webinars. But Deb, I'll let you jump in there.
So what I sometimes see is that on that shelf that has the 9 different little slots, what I see is 30 Legos and 30 Duplos and 30 Magnetiles and 30 of something else, instead of 150 Legos, 150 Magnetiles, right? Where kids can actually do something with them for an extended period of time. So my big piece is, don't do cookie cutter classrooms where everybody has the same manips. But if you've already done that, then consolidate them so children have, and you have 3 manipulatives on the shelf, but there's lots of them,
and
so that they can, and time to play, right? Because teachers will say, well, I give them free time and they don't do anything. And the first question I say is, how many things are there to do of those, right? Oh, they just dump the Legos and move away. How many Legos do you have? And it's typically, we have 20. No.
Right.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with 20
100.
Legos? Or
No.
what are they going to do with 15 minutes? I'm going to throw the blocks because that's all I can do in 15 minutes. So, sometimes that too much, you've listed like 25 things that we need to talk about, but that too much can be maybe you have too much individual types, not
Right.
too many pieces,
Right.
right?
All right, and you know what I'm writing down right now, guys, is I'm writing down things that you can't have too much of.
Oh,
Mhm.
I like it.
You can't have too much play. You can't
Right.
have too much time. You can't have too much water. You
Mhm.
can't have too much eye contact and relationships.
Relationships,
Yeah.
yes, put those in there.
Now we're circled back to that surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to add CDs, albums, and digital music. I think for me,
Music.
that's
Oh,
me.
yeah.
Like my music collection is obscene
Books.
to some books, but right. So I think it's that, yeah, the too much idea is like if they have too many of these Legos, it is gonna be a pile on the floor. It's just gonna be a mess and be like, well, how old's your group?
Mhm.
Where are they at? Is this September? Is this May?
Yeah, good point.
If they keep dumping, why not get some of the hollow blocks and make a dump?
Yeah.
Hey, bring the trucks over here, dump all the stuff inside, make a parameter, and then see where they go with it.
Mhm.
Because maybe I need to dump it out in order to see what I got.
Exactly.
But if I only have 20 minutes to experience this, you're only giving me time to dump it, not to process, not to design, not to create, not to innovate, not to actually execute. And so now my teacher might think that all I do is dump, when really the environment and the expectations with the limited time expectation is what is 100% causing this to happen.
Right.
And maybe I need to dump, right?
Right.
Although, I had when I was a toddler teacher, I had a bucket over in the corner that they could throw things into and they could dump all they wanted. They had those soft little pom-poms in it because they were toddlers.
Yep.
And I also had a bucket, like a big heavy sand bucket that was on a rope, and people were like, "Oh my God, you have a rope in the classroom?" And I said, "Yes." And it was over in the corner, and the pom-pom, little big, huge pom-pom balls in different sizes were in that bucket. And when the children started doing this to the manipulatives, right, I would say, "Oh, you want to dump and fill? Let's go to the dump and fill bucket." And then that got out what they needed to do, right? Because they had plenty of time, right? They could play all morning long, but they were working on that skill of dumping and filling.
Right.
And that's what they needed. And so you sometimes as a teacher, you have to think, oh, what are they telling me? Oh, they need to dump and fill. Just like the little ones, the toddlers who want to turn on the faucet and turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. The teachers are like so frustrated. I said they're learning something. That's what they're doing.
Right.
So you need to, what can they do in order to continue this learning? So, yeah, sometimes I think we have to do the teacher things.
I want to add to the list there. You can't have too much of an understanding about early childhood development.
100%.
Educators, parents, just general people in public. I think, again, I've said this a number of times, maybe even on here in previous conversations, but I think that should be offered like Psych 101 or, I think Intro to Early Childhood.
Development. Yes, child development, please.
I think that should be a standard course because it's where we all start, right? And if we understood that more, you would understand why, be more selective. And I think, we've been talking classroom, but I also don't want to exclude this from families and parents because I think that same idea can be available on on your child's toy shelf or in their room. How much stuff is around? Their room's a mess all the time. Well, do they have 16 bins of tiny pieces all the time?
Yeah.
Maybe rotate your materials there. Talk to your neighbors. Maybe you have some swaps for stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same for classrooms. If you need to consolidate all the Legos, so one room has the Legos, and then they have the Magna-Tiles, and then they have the, Tinker Toys or whatever you've got. Yeah, but I'll say that I think all classrooms hopefully have that, uniblock and hollow block section with abundance. But again, if you're that classroom that only has 5 hollow blocks,
yeah,
it's going to be really hard. And I don't want to also pose that like you need to spend $2,500 to get your unit block section back up. If you could get a grant or you have that funding, you have a scholarship, that's only going to be a benefit. But if it's not, well, then how do you make that work? How do you create a space where the children can build big and create the world around them? Because they need that time to go, and then to go back. let's see, here's a lot of, I gave too many examples. To how much play. Deb, one of those things that I thought of when you asked that question, like, is play that reward after doing your work? So it is
I
that
hope
10,
not.
right? If
We
it's
hope
that
not.
10-minute, 15-minute, like you've done your work, now you can get into it. Well, we know now there's not nearly enough. And I go, is there a time where there's too much play? The idea that if you see play as the learning opportunities and the assessment time where you can do authentic assessment in the moment rather than stop what you're doing, come to my table, fill out this worksheet. What if you brought the worksheet over there and just said, hey, I've got a whole pile of spools from there, but they're mixed up. Can you sort them into these different containers for me? I need big, medium, and small. Done.
Done.
Bringing
Cake.
it. Here's the grocery store. What do you got for fruits and vegetables? Like bring the assessment there to do that. One, then you're not interrupting to play, hopefully too much. And if you're having to stop and break it up where it becomes assessment time in the play, the kids will know. They'll tell you, they don't go away. We don't need you here.
So I think that assessment piece is where, again, we have way too much. How many times, I don't know, on some of the checklists that I've seen in assessment, there are 25 indicators that teachers are supposed to assess when you could probably narrow it down to 5 because some of them are pretty repetitious, and you certainly could do it through observation, right? Authentic. And the documentation, I don't want us to lose that, but so stop driving yourselves crazy and don't wait to assess until 2 weeks before parent teacher conferences. You should be writing notes every day about children. You should have a plan, and you should be listening and taking down what they're saying for language. I mean, if you did that, and when I was a teacher, I assessed every day, but I knew what I was going to assess, and I only assessed 1 or 2 children in the morning and 1 or 2 children in the afternoon for the same thing. And the assessment was, how are they it was on a developmental milestone thing. It wasn't on a current appropriate or approved assessment form, but it was, how are they interacting socially?
Right.
What language are they using? How are they solving problems with each other? How are they, it was those kinds, and that's what you need, because if you do those little notes every day, and it took me, I didn't assess all morning because I was interacting with kids, but if I said, so today I just want to see how they're doing socially, and I'm going to pick Johnny and Susie today, then I might hover a little more around Johnny and Susie just listening. But it took maybe 10 minutes to take an anecdotal record and then move on, right? I did that. I did the same kind of assessment approach that week with every child, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. And then the next week I did physical development, fine outside, or fine motor development, but it wasn't, I need you to cut on a straight line for me. If they cut on a straight line, I go, oh, well, I didn't know they could do that.
So
And
I think we agree there
down.
could be too much inappropriate assessment.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Interruptive assessment.
Interruptive. Directive.
I saw kids were playing blocks one time, and I was observing in the classroom, and the teacher, obviously it had been a week of interruptive assessments. The kids were building, the teacher approached without looking up. The kid just said, red, blue, yellow.
Yeah. Right?
I mean, I'm just going to throw it at you, but it's either right or not. Get out of my.
They get it. And
get out of my space.
Well, because they're doing the work. The play is the work for them. They don't need like that. And if we knew what we were looking for, if we had in our internally our own, if you had the assessment list basically committed to memory, when you're just sitting at the table drawing and cutting, and you go, oh yeah, Daquan, you cut that out, no problem. Okay, check it off. Like you've got it. Or take a picture of it in the moment so you can go back to it rather than having to miss it. you find out whatever works for you. If it's a notebook on your lanyard and you just quick jot it down. So I think there's that piece, but also, as we said, how long does that checklist need to be? What's really at the core of it? And I think that's, again, without getting only onto that topic, I think we can feel it in ourselves when how much is too much. And I think the same with like your environment, materials, noise. I brought up noise because I think the idea of like that productive levels of noise is really different. And I think the idea that I thought of is I feel like this conversation is really about finding a balance. And your balance, the three of us in this conversation, if we use the topic of noise, are going to have a different measurable decibel level of acceptable or comfortable noise. It doesn't mean that it's disruptive or challenging for the other children necessarily, or the other adults. So I think it's knowing that we each have our own limit, and also knowing and then respecting that other people have different limits than you do, and having to try to either have a conversation about that or just acknowledge it and say like, yep, you know what? You climbing trees makes me nervous. Hey,
I won't
Lisa,
look.
can you step in? You know, like, can we trade on this? And like, that might be how it goes. If you know that there's value in the experience and you're not comfortable, how can you get yourself comfortable? Baby step your way there, asking somebody who is, how can you help me with this? But also it might be a trade out. So I think the idea of, and then, you know, I think there's so many, we get, again, all of those different examples that were listed. It has to be that conversation or that internal assessment of like, okay, what's really going on here? Oh, they did build the rescue bots headquarters right next to the kind of the book nook quiet corner, and my kind of auditorily sensitive child's over there just like, yeah, you're gonna have to move HQ to the other side of the room. And the other child, I've got those noise canceling headphones. Do you want to put them on now while you're reading? Would that help you focus? Great. So now I'm meeting both those needs without having to say all of it stops.
Yeah, stop. We can't do this anymore. It's too loud. Blah 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 blah.
And then they get banned, you know,
right?
Infinitely.
Right.
Well, and I think that goes back to the teacher reflecting. So,
sure.
In the Porch Play Chat with Mike, we were like, when is too much help, interfere with autonomy, but also
how do you
when the children really need you, right? And so how do you ask yourself those questions and slow down enough that you're not reacting,
right?
And you're not jumping in to help without being needed. Okay, what is that child telling me, verbally or non-verbally? What baby step could I take? Right. Instead of being so reactive? I'm an auditory learner, so my tolerance for loud noises is probably much lower than other people. But, you know, when I was doing accreditation visits, when I was going into a one-room schoolhouse with 70 children, I knew to bring aspirin and one earplug, so I could at least plug one ear so I wasn't overstimulated. So sometimes the teacher has to adapt.
Right. Sure.
And not expect the room of children to adapt to the teacher's needs. And sometimes I think that's what we don't reflect on enough.
Right. Oh man, I think there's so much importance with that reflection piece. And there's that idea too, I think, with the idea of help, like going back to when children really need help versus when they want help, or when they just ask for it because they know you'll do it. Like, you know, this timeline, it's cold here in Minnesota where I'm at, so there's a lot of jackets and zippers, and guess what? There's going to be some struggling those first few times, those first few weeks, and the kids are just like, come here, do it, and they just stick their bellies out and like, do it. And I'm like, oh, you got to show me where you're stuck. What's going on? What's the problem? And I'll push them to keep trying, and giving them the, you know, the mechanics of what to do, to cross tension with your hand going down and then you pull your zipper up. See how much easier that works? Then we keep working, because I think there's that time where you're just like, I need to get these kids
To
outside.
get them out.
Let's
Yeah.
go. Come on.
I'm going to do it for them. And then
Right.
you're going to end up doing it for them all year in the
Right.
cold.
And so are you really helping? No, you're just doing it and delaying their understanding of that skill or getting that confidence, because when they get it for themselves for the first time, then there's that feeling of, hey, I did it. They want to show off. Hey, look, I did my zipper by myself. How great does that feel
Mhm.
for that child to be able to do that? Or that grown-up, if you've made it that long with everybody zipping your jackets for you, maybe you as a grown-up will also feel very, really remarkable. But I think that
Accomplished.
idea,
I
right?
want to go back to something that Shelley, who's one of the Porch Play Chats for this series, said on Monday when she said, "Is that helpful to the
We can't
child?
say it again.
Is that helpful to the child?"
Right.
So when she would be coaching an adult in stepping back and allowing children to play, and the adult wanted to do something, her question to the adult was, is that helpful to the child? And so I think that having that mantra in the back of your mind might be helpful, so that you're not, I mean, I've been in classrooms where children are like, teacher, 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 teacher. And I would ask the teacher, why do they ask you so much? You know,
Right.
why? You know, that I was worried, you know, is it, are these, do these children have a disability I'm unaware of? It doesn't seem like it. So,
Right.
you know, it was it. And so she said, oh, it's just, I feel like I'm constantly being pulled in 100 directions. And then the question was, why is that?
Yeah. You know, because we're ultimately trying to give those children real life skills. If it's self-help with dressing and getting things ready, if it's being able to wait while we're at snack, because one of my common responses, I'll be handing out crackers. I need milk. I need milk. First of all, can you just show me some sign language? And I don't know. And I go, do I have milk in my hands? Nope. Not an octopus. I can't serve you all at the same time, and I can't give you what you want. So you might have to wait. And guess what? That waiting skill is going to be very valuable for the rest of your life. So, you know, what are you going to do? How do you ask for it appropriately? Or how do you just say, okay, I can problem solve this, that, oh, you have cucumbers in your hand, yet I want crackers. Okay, how do I, you know, what's going to be a better way to go about this? And I think, you know, again, meeting the needs, helping children develop those skills, and also like using them as the resources. Hey, you know how to zip. Can you get over there and help them out? Don't do it for them. Maybe just show them how to do it. And again, having that building that community within oneself. And so that makes me think of like also the directiveness that we have with teachers in classrooms. Like when there is, if you're telling me that you're supporting creative development by everybody doing the cotton ball snowmans, no, you're not. I mean, they're doing the project. It's way too directive. How open-ended can these experiences be? So again, too much direction now takes it away, where children just become reliant. And again, I've seen it when I was instructing college courses. College level students, juniors and seniors, are like, what do you want my paper to be on?
Oh
What do you
God,
want my
yes.
project to be? And I'm like,
How
that's
many pages?
Yep.
How many PowerPoint slides?
I need you to come up, create a game. Well, what do you want my game to be about? I've given you the skills I want you to address. Yeah, but what do you want it to be on?
Yeah.
Like, right. And it's to no fault of their own necessarily, because if that's the system you've been pushed through this whole time, we're not giving these young adults skills to be, you know, able to make decisions and do those things. So I think that directive piece is also something to be cautious of. How much is too much? There can be way too much, because children are just going to become products of that example. Like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'm really good at
But
getting
then
the
that
task
is
done.
unfortunately often then the style of teaching that they bring with them.
Right.
And now we find ourselves, you know, 20, 30 years later, still having the same conversation.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I think that was a great example too, on how always giving them all the information they need and doing it for them is so harmful to them as adults. Because even I mean, think about being a teacher in a classroom where someone has told you what to do all the time.
Right.
And now you're in charge of all these little munchkins.
Well, okay. So I have a thing that I used to say a lot, and I stopped saying it for a while, and it totally fits with this. in the early years of doing the workshops and stuff, a lot of times the teachers would say things like, God, I wish that they would just go play. When I say go play, it's like they stand there and they don't know what to do but go play and na. And I said, have you ever thought that when you get that pushback from the 4-year-old, it's the same thing you do when somebody says go teach?
Right.
And you say, well, what's the letter of the day and what's the curriculum that I have to use and what's the theme this week? I said, it's exactly the same thing.
Right.
So at some
It
point,
is.
if you want that to stop, then this system that you have been subjected to needs to stop. And it does often, I think, can feel a little overwhelming. Like, well, where's that entry point that's going to just cease and desist this from this point forward? And quite honestly, and I don't want to sound like I'm beating my personal dead horse here, but the closer we get to a true child-centered, play-based, relationship-focused environment, we are going to start detoxing and undoing some of that.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in the climate where it's all about accountability and assessment, we're not going to get there, because even though it is important that we assess children's development, it's important that way if we.
Yeah, but you're using
need
a
to do-
buzzword. Assessing can have 59 different
50.
interpretations based on who's in the conversation, who's listening, right?
That's exactly right. And because we need to be the people who I see that a child might not be within the normal range of development in a certain domain, right? But we don't have to do 25 items on a checklist in one domain of development to figure that out. If we just observe them and play with them, it's pretty apparent that maybe this child needs additional support.
Right.
And we're going to try to do that in the classroom, but if we don't see much improvement, then maybe it's time to have them screened by early intervention.
Right.
So, but it's really interesting, this balance of when is too much,
Right.
and when is it interfering with development versus supporting development? And if we could just answer that question, and if people could reflect on that.
I mean, I think we've been living it, as you said, for decades now, because we know the system isn't working, and the thought is like, let's just keep putting more. Let's ask teachers to do more paperwork, especially in the special ed world. I need you to do more paperwork to really prove what's going on, to do this stuff, and we know it's not bringing the results. And so I think there's that piece. So I don't want to end on a negative note. I wanted to add more, like,
think of something positive.
Well, I had an example that I thought was a great conversation that I'm from one of your previous Porch Play Chats with Mike Huber, when he was talking about nature and the abundance of nature. And he brought up an example from our discussion from our podcast about the wave and the kind of playing tag with the wave and kind of the insatiable nature of children and how they'll want to keep playing. So like, the adults, we will be like, I'm done playing tag, and the kids like, no, but I want to still play. And how children have been able to play in this water for ever and eons before, but also that the wave's never going to stop. The child can play until they're fully saturated and they get all the stimulation, all the information, and all the exertion that they need. So that idea of recognizing that your limit of how much is too much, again, is not going to be maybe what the child's is, and that we're so quick to shut it down, I think is something to really be cautious of. Because I think I use your example, Lisa, of the child who shaving cream, red, green and blue, blue and yellow to make green, and this in the sandwich bags, she burned through tons, 40 bags. And I remember
she needed 40.
Exactly. And I think it was such an illuminative moment for me, for being in the audience that day, to go, wow, you could hear the audible scoffs of the materials, but shutting that down for her, she's still going to need to get to 40 bags, whether she's doing it in that one sitting, in that next day, over the next week, over that month. But what if we gave children that time, if we recognized that their need for more is maybe higher than ours and we really let them get into it, imagine all the amazing things they would show us and the new questions and new discoveries that they would bring to us because they've had that time. So that's my hope.
What I will add is, because sometimes this is a kind of a point to be made in support of the play-based and the child-centered, is that if they're given the opportunity to make 40 because I needed to make 40, they might not need to ever make 40 again.
Exactly.
But they might not. So I really am a fan of that kind of until they're done. If you need to stand up at lunch until you're done. So that mentality of, well, next year they're not going to be able to do 40 bags of shaving cream. Well, first of all, it's not next year, right? But right now they do. So why would I not facilitate this? It's not hurting anybody. And there's a very good chance that this behavior, whatever it is, might not need to continue because it did have the opportunity to be saturated, Yeah.
They were able to resolve the need that they had.
Yeah. And why would I not facilitate that? Like, that's a problem.
Right. We're not going to shut down babies. Hey, you've taken your steps today.
Yeah.
No more steps.
No more steps.
You can't, you've fallen down 3 times. That's the limit. You got to stop. You try again tomorrow. Like, we're never going to shut that down.
That's a good one. I'm going to steal that one.
Please.
So I will confess, as an infant teacher, if a child began walking in my classroom, when I knew the parent was coming, I held the child the entire time until the parent came.
Right.
So that when I handed them off, it would not be something they missed. Right. So that's
a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation, but that is truly what I did, because I did not want them.
Mama, that first time mama. Yeah. She said, Mama, and she walked today.
Oh my God. And you just have a parent burst into tears and you're wondering, what just happened? I thought they'd be happy. And I'm like, no, that's a milestone they missed.
Yeah. All the staff needs to know the code word to keep that under wraps that day. Like, nope, she did not do any of that today. Nope. This is the very first time.
Very first time. And the mom would come in the next day and say, oh my God, she walked. And I'm like, and so we do that. And I said, I never lied to parents unless it was a milestone. And then I pretended like I never seen it happen, because that is not something you want to rob a parent of.
Right.
Ooh, talk about relationship building.
Important.
Ross, this has been amazing, as it always is. Thank you. We want you to come back again. So our next series is in March, but it goes on Tuesdays.
Okay.
I'll send you those dates, but hang tight, because I'm going to close this out, but I don't want you to leave us. And so so to learn more about IPA-USA, please visit our website at IPA-USA.org. And until next time, keep on playing.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.